Alright, we're back. So we're at the back of the car here, and somebody's installed some exhaust cutouts. Make it a little bit louder. Alright, so I got the O2 sensors disconnected. They're hanging there. And these bolts, in this case, are 14 millimeter. I seem to think that normal stock bolts are 15s, but again, I'm not entirely sure. These can be difficult, just like the fronts, but they're a little easier to get to, especially with air tools. But you're just gonna take these loose, and once you're done with all that, the exhaust system should just drop out of the way. I don't think I'll be able to film this process because it can be a little difficult, and it's just about rocking it up at the engine side to get it loose. When you're here, you'll understand. So I'm going to go ahead and take these 4 bolts out and take the exhaust loose, and I will return as soon as this is done. Alright, and I'm back. With aftermarket exhaust pipes, sometimes the fit is off and it can give you fits. That delay was about 25 minutes of me cussing at, yanking at, and overall manhandling the exhaust pipe trying to get it to clear this lower stud. I finally, just in a fit of rage, just started shaking it and finally got it to break loose. If you got a stock pipe, you won't have that problem, but again, with aftermarket, that can sometimes occur. But anyway, now we're back, and what we need to be focusing on is getting the clutch cable loose. Now, if you're leaving the transmission in the car and just unbolting it, you may not have to do this, but sometimes I just like to get it out of the way. And I am taking the transmission, so I got disconnected. And there's one 8mm bolt there that takes this dust shield off, and we'll go from there. At least I think that's 8. It looks like 8. Nope, wrong again. 10mm. So that's a 10mm bolt. I just knocked my light over, so I'm sure everything just went dark. Actually a 9, but it's so loose a 10 will cover it. That or I grab an 11. Nope, it's a 9. There it goes. And then the dust shield just slides right off. And you can put the bolt back in its spot. Okay. And if for whatever reason you need to look up in there, there's your clutch throwout bearing, clutch fork, all that stuff. Now, right there is just a little C-clip. Holds it on and just pulls right off with a screwdriver. I say it just pulls right off with a screwdriver, but it can be stubborn. There it goes. Alright, now what you're going to want to do is put a little bit of prying force on the clutch fork and then slip the cable toward the roof of the car. It can take a lot of force to get that clutch out of the way. And then the clutch cable slips off and you can just pull it free. And it'll slide that way. Alright. Now, for those of you who are leaving the transmission in the car, at this point you'll want to start taking the bell housing bolts off, and there's 7 of them total. 3 on the left, or 2 on the left, 2 on the top, and 3 on the right. And you'll have to take the starter out too, which is a whole nother can of worms. But in my case, I'm going to have to start taking the transmission electrical off, and then the motor mount nuts. Now you can see the motor mount nut there, and it's back up in there. There it is. I can't remember which size that bolt is. I'm wanting to say 7/8 or 15/16. I'll get that in a minute and take all that off. Now, something else we got to touch on is taking the power steering and AC compressor off. They both use 4 10mm bolts. Now, somebody in this case has had this off before and taken that hidden bolt that hides behind the line out. They did me a favor, really, because if that bolt is in there, it has to be the last bolt out and the first bolt in, and the only way to get at it is with a 10mm ratcheting wrench, which if you're doing any kind of serious mechanic work, get a set. But if you try to take that bolt out by itself, it'll back into this line right here and ruin it. Ask me how I know. Now, hang on. Sorry about that. My compressor decided it needed to compress. But anyway, that bolt right there has to be the first, last one out, first one in, and then there's 3 other bolts there. So as soon as you take those loose, the power steering pump will drop out of the way. We'll have to address this cable here. This cable goes over to, there's a stud up in there that it goes to. In every case I've done this, that stud, the nut does not turn by itself. It takes the stud with it and it winds up winding that ground cable up with it. If that happens, your best bet is to disconnect it up at the top. There's a few more connectors up there, and then you can just take it and get it loose once you get the engine out. Just take all the electrical with it. I may wind up doing that anyway, because otherwise you'll have to disconnect it from the starter and every other place. But that cable goes up to the top, and I'll show you what it does once I've got it up there. The AC compressor is the same story as the power steering pump, but there's no bolt that you have to have special treatment on. Yeah, it's just 4 10mm bolts. I'd show you all this, but it's pretty boring. Just take them out, and there's no special tools required, just one extension, and you can take them all out. So as soon as I get all of that loose, I will be back with the motor mount nut removal, and the something else too is the lower radiator hose, which just like the top radiator hose, disconnect the clamps, take it loose, try not to let it drain antifreeze all over you. But anyway, as soon as we get that out, the power steering, the AC, then the drive shaft and the cross member, and then the shifter, this engine should be ready to come out, whole engine and transmission combo. But I will return once I remove the power steering pump and the AC compressor. And we're back. Nothing really to note. The power steering pump is now free, as is the AC compressor. There are 2 electrical connectors you're going to want to disconnect. The crankshaft position sensor, which is right back there, and then the clutch on the AC compressor. That's just so they don't get tangled on the way out. I still got to take the lower radiator hose off, but other than that, we're getting close. I am going to finish up for the night, and I will return tomorrow with part 2 of finishing this. So we're back with day 2, and when we last left off, which would be seconds for you, I had gotten nearly everything done. We were going for the motor mount nuts, the drive shaft, the cross member, and the shifter. So for starting off today, since I'm clean, we're going to go ahead and get the shifter out of the transmission. For this we need to get in the car and take this off. If you view my channel, you can see I removed the center console. This is part of it. Just pull that off and give that a good tug. And a pop loose. And there's a connector back there. There's the shifter. We're going to have to get an 8mm to take the gasket off, and then I'll be able to get to the shifter itself. Yeah, 4 8mm bolts hold the gaskets on. Now, if you're going to be leaving the transmission in the car, this step helps matters, but it's not necessary. You still have to slide the transmission back to clear the clutch if it's a stick shift. If it's auto, you're fine. But if it is a stick, you'll have to slide the transmission a little bit, and the shifter can sometimes catch, and it'll make your life tough. So either way, pulling the transmission or not, it's best to take this out. These are lock nuts, and they never get easy. Okay, now the gasket should just pull up. Doesn't look like anybody's ever had this out before. We're going to have to slip the gasket up over the shifter and take it out of there. I'll be right back as soon as I'm done. Okay, with the gasket out of the way, it's just rubber. You can stretch it around and get it up and over. There are 4 bolts that hold the shifter in. They're 13mm. And there will be some transmission fluid potentially on the shifter, so have a sack ready, or just set it outside, whatever. And before I take the last one out, I should probably go ahead and take the shifter handle off. It's going to be 10 millimeter. Actually, I don't need to do that. I'm an idiot. Because that whole thing's coming out. I'm thinking whenever I left the whole shifter base in and did it like that last time, and the shifter got caught on everything on the way out. So once the 4 bolts are removed, the shifter will come out. Now you may have to give it a little coaxing. And by a little, I mean a lot, because it's sealed on. But it'll just pull right out as soon as you break the seal. I'm going to need both hands, so be right back. Alright, I actually had to go under the car and hit it with a screwdriver and a hammer to break it loose, but you can see it just pulls right out of there. I'm just going to set it right there to get it out of my way. And that's how you change the shifter if you wanted to know. Now, the next order of business is going to be the motor mount nuts. The motor mount nuts are, I showed you those the other day, but they are 2 13/16 nuts, and you just get a wrench up on them and loosen them off. I'll take both hands, so I shall return. Alright, so the motor mount nuts are now free. I went ahead and drained the transmission fluid, which is just the drain plug. Now we're going to go about pulling the drive shaft out. This is going to be a 12-point, 12mm socket that you're going to require. It's going to need to be on a swivel and a couple of extensions. Now this can be difficult in my case because I've already got the spark plugs out and all that, but the transmission really needs to be in gear so the nuts can't go. But there's 4 bolts that hold the drive shaft on. You just got to work the swivels in there and break them loose. They can be really, 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 really tight. So don't be afraid to really get into them. But once you break those loose, the drive shaft will just drop and then pull out. Mark your drive shaft so you know which way it goes back in. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and do this. I shall return as soon as the drive shaft is out. Okay, the drive shaft has been removed. Mine was extremely difficult. I actually had to get a blowtorch and some impact tools on it. But yeah, if you run into stuff like that, use heat. Okay, so now we're coming into the final stages of getting ready to pull it. We want to get the coolant reservoir brace out of the way, and that's that thing that comes up that potentially poke you in the eye if you're not careful. It's got 2 8mm bolts on the bottom, and that's all that holds it on. Once those are out, the piece pulls right out. And you can just stick the bolts back in Okay, now we're moving on to the final stages. The transmission crossmember right here. This can vary depending on your year, but in this case it's 4 bolts and then 2 in the center that actually attach it to the transmission mount. So once you take those out, be very careful because the transmission might try to rock back on you. So make sure you're out of the way. Once those are out, we'll put the car back on the ground, roll it out, and get ready to pull the engine. I will return once all that is complete. Alrighty, we have the car pushed out. Got the engine puller hooked up with the load leveler. There's a spot on the back of the head where you can thread in a bolt, and then on the front. And we're ready to pull it. As you can see, I've already lifted it a little bit. I went ahead and took the radiator fan out just to give me a little extra clearance. But whenever you're pulling the engine, just pull it slow and steady. Keep an eye out. Make sure you didn't miss anything. And just keep going with it. So I'll set the camera up. There. I missed 2 connectors. Or 1 connector. Right here. Yeah, I may have to lower it back down a little bit to get that out. But everything else appears to be coming with. Yep. Getting a great view of nothing right there. There we go. Just another one. Why it's not twist on me so bad. What I missed was that ground wire. That appears to be a 15. Yep. Continue, hopefully unimpeded. And everything appears to be loose. ladies and gentlemen, is how it's done. Now you're left with a perfectly disgusting engine bay that you need to clean up, and whatever you need to do here. Thanks for watching. If you managed to make it through the whole video, good luck. It's not that bad of a job.